I don't think that we're actually taking the time to consider, what does advocacy look like in the modern society, right? What does it look like in modern day? It's so easy to repeat the things of the past that worked in the past, but it's very lazy, right? Because when you sit and think about it, okay, well, in the past, Black communities were a lot more segregated, right? Access to Black businesses, resources for Black businesses, right? First of all, we were in proxy to one another. So you had, they had more resources. There was more access to these businesses. That's not a thing today, right? As much as we like to talk about, oh, well, Black people never want to be inconvenienced. Well, I think that's a very unfair thing to say, because that's the American way, right? The American way is convenience. We've all been bred and almost like neutered at this point of any real sense of self-reliance, right? We're no longer making handmade soaps. I mean, you have some people who really are putting in the time, but for the most part, we're not chemists. We're not making our own soap. We've got products that we like that are a part of these conglomerate brands, right? And when you start talking about shopping, the reality is that they're all a monopoly, right? It's not, the market is a monopoly. It's not to say, hey, we're not going to shop here, I'm not going to shop there. Because if you go and say, I'm not going to shop at this brand, I'm going to shop at that brand, well, they're all connected. They're going to profit either way. So I just think that when we think about advocacy, what worked in the past because of the time in which we were in, right? Do I think it sent a huge message? Do I think that it was effective? Absolutely. And it is that effectiveness that has led us to where we are today. So what is it that we're wanting, right? What is it that we're wanting? What is it that we're advocating for? And all the ways I think people critique the politic and like, oh, they're like critiquing politics and they're like capitalism, et cetera, et cetera. In your real life, like when you get offline, you sign out of that podcast, what are you doing? Where are you going? Where are you shopping? You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? Right. And when you start talking about food deserts and you start talking about privilege of like geographical locations, it all plays a huge role in who's going to be able to advocate and do what and vice versa. Right. Like, I just think that there comes a point in time where you really start to kind of deconstruct a lot of this and you dissect a lot of this. And it's like, okay, what are the solutions? What is feasible? What is reasonable? Right. And how much of this is just rage bait to keep us enraged? You know what I mean? Like, I can understand why some people in these particular religious sectors would check out and they're like, I'm not engaging in this. Right. Because it's unfortunate as it is, there's no solution. That's not a solution. You know what I mean? That's not a solution. It's just not. So to say, okay, I'm not going to go to Target. I'm going to go to Dollar General. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, okay, but it's like, what if I don't know. And the thing about Tabitha Brown, something I am really pushing back on is I no longer believe in sacrificial leaders for the Black community, for the Black collective. Okay. I no longer believe in that. I think we've had way too many leaders sacrifice their entire livelihoods to get absolutely nothing. Now, people are going to critique and say what they want about Dr. Umar. We don't even know if he's a doctor. No, I'm kidding. Let me be serious. But Dr. Umar, right? But in all of Dr. Umar's sacrificial radicalism, because we understand that to be radical to that extent, to be able to just be pro-Black, he comes from a more Pan-African politic, that requires a lot of sacrifice, right? Because we know what comes with that, right? You're not going to be partnered with certain brands. You're not going to be, you know what I mean? You really aren't going to be able to assimilate into American society, right? It's not to say you're not going to be able to be a part of white supremacy or what. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in general, that particular type of politic, that level of radicalism comes at a cost. And we are all aware of that. And what has Dr. Umar got from that? Right. You have some Black people who are like, I'm with this politic. I'll watch his videos, but I won't donate to the school. I won't donate to his business. I won't donate to his political movement, but I'll consume his content. And that's about as far as I'll go. Right. I don't know anybody who's come out and say, yeah, I've donated $100,000 or I've donated, $5,000 this year to Dr. Umar and his, so when I see everybody's like, oh, well, Tabitha Brown should take her products out of Target, I think that's wildly unfair and that is completely unrealistic and it's entirely unreasonable. This is a Black woman who's worked hard. We don't know her life. I mean, we know that Black life in general is pretty hard. I mean, listening to her story, I'm not going to get into her and personalize this, but she said that, she was struggling with healthcare. She didn't have a job. She was doing Uber Eats. And look at her life now. You know what I mean? So I just think that I think that it's a psychological thing. We have to really look at what is it with our love-hate relationship with Black figures and Black people who are able to have a little bit of the American dream. Because it's very clear to me that we have a disdain for that. Because when I listen to some of the critique and some of the think pieces and, a lot of people's opinions around this, it sounds to me like in a lot of ways, we want each other to stay down and to be a part of the majority who are struggling, who are deprived, right? Because that's relatable. Not only is it relatable, but it's expected, right? That is the Black stereotype. And so when you start to kind of phase out of that, and let's say you are a Black woman and you have a brand in Target, and so forth, if something goes off, it's like, well, you need to get down here with us. You need to be a part of this with us, right? Instead of ever seeing our Black leaders and Black entrepreneurs as something to aspire to, we see it as something to tear down. And just given these very two contrasting examples, it's very evident to me that you just can't please people, because I don't think we know what direction we really want to go in. I don't think we know. I really don't think we know. And when things pop off, like the Black Lives Matter movement, and seeing how those two lesbian women stole all that money, not enough think pieces, not enough conversation around how do we resolve this? How do we ensure that things like this don't happen again, right? Like what can we do in our part of advocacy? Because this is where we are today, right? This is advocacy today. Advocacy today is people taking the money that they are saying that they're using for the Black collective, right? Like, so what are we really talking about? Because that's advocacy today. How do we prevent that from happening? Right. So I'm not on board with it. I'm not on board with, the sacrificial lamb for the Black community. We've had too many. We've had way too many people put their livelihoods, their careers, everything on the front line. And it was only a means of entertainment for the vast majority of us. It was a means to say, okay, kudos. You have our respect. But we're not going to, that's all we got for you, and I just don't think that's fair. When we talk about Black people and we talk about African Americans, what does American life look like for us? Are we just going to be relegated to deplorable conditions and poverty? Like, what are we talking about here? Because to me, anybody who's online doing a think piece, anybody who's online doing anything, anybody who's waking up every day is out here trying to make it and trying to do something for themselves. So I think that we are a little confused about what the politic really is. I think we want to play into socialism, especially today, because to be honest, I don't really think many of us even have a very sound, not just Black people, but Americans in general, right? I don't think that we even really have and this is people who do think pieces as well, right? I don't think that we really have a sound understanding of politics anyway. Capitalism, generally we understand capitalism to be, okay, hey, listen, you're exploiting other people for labor and you're out to the dollar. Right. But that's about as far as we can go. You know what I mean? I don't think that we genuinely understand politics to the point where we can come out here and be critiquing somebody else's politic or projecting a politic onto them. I don't think we understand it enough. I really don't. And the reason why I say that is because I don't think that any of us have really put in an ample amount of studious time, to really understand something and to figure out what is it that we want. Because I just think that these solutions are a bit ridiculous. It's just not very sound to me. You know what I mean? It's not very sound. It's not as simple as, okay, we're not going to shop at this one particular store, right? I mean, you're talking about the market of you're talking about monopoly. You're talking about an entire market. You know what I mean? And it's not just the particular stores. Like I said, it's a monopoly. So it's like, what are we really talking about here? You see what I'm saying? And again, like I said, with my grandmother giving this example of the KFC chicken. Hey, back then, Okay, she was like, great. I don't even think she ever even ate at KFC, right? But no problem. She can fry her chicken at home. She can decide that she wants to, go to Popeye's chicken. Hey, it's simple. You know what I mean? She can go to Wingstop. I mean, she doesn't eat these places, right? Again, different time. You see what I'm saying? So you have to understand that what worked for previous generations was a climate of self-reliance. We no longer have that. Right. There was a point in time where for the Black community, not only were we close in proxy, but we had an understanding that, hey, we're going to support one another. But as a collective, we actually want to see you win. Like, we actually want you to make it. You know what I mean? We actually want you to get out the hood. You know what I mean? I'm actually happy for you that you're prospering and you're making it the American way. You know what I mean? Because you are an African American, and this is every bit a part of yours as it is, the next person, right? Like, there was an understanding of that because they understood where they came from and how hard it was to back then, and they wanted a piece of their pie because it was due, right? So it's like, what are we really talking about? I think sometimes when we think about history and we think about advocacy, and we forget what we were boycotting for. We forget what we were advocating for. And I say we, I want you to understand when I'm saying we, I mean they, right? Because some of that is what we're living in today. So it's like, okay, are we relishing in the ancestors' prayers? Like, y'all know, I've heard people say that. People be like, our ancestors have come a long way. And you know what I mean? Like, this is what they were fighting for. So it's like, which one is it? I believe that the solution, and I don't want to say this like, I'm not trying to sound like Du Bois, and I don't want to take this, I'm not saying in the sense like the solution is excellence, because when I say excellence, I think that people take that as like this radical form of excellence that has been projected onto Black people, that is highly unrealistic, that is based on, very unrealistic factors like merit, education, and just external success. When I say excellence, I mean like do the best you can with what you have where you're at, and go do like living your truth and in your purpose. You know what I mean? Like, that's more so what I'm saying. And I don't know, I just think that sometimes with our inability to acknowledge the progression within our community and what our ancestors have fought for, and acknowledging the progression and also acknowledging the messages that we send to young adults, like, I think we're lost. Can I be honest? I think we're a little lost on what the politic. I think we're lost on what the politic is. I think we're lost on what the plot is. And I think because of the desegregation within the Black community, with all of that, like, I just think that we no longer communicate. We no longer move to the same beat of the same drum. And not because of capitalism, and not because of some people are over here or over there, but because just generally, I think we're I don't want to say simply put, like, we're more individualistic, because I don't necessarily feel that to be so, but I just think that we no longer commune and convene and come together about political issues anymore. We just no longer do that, and maybe that is just simply put, like, we're just more individualistic today, but I just think that we just have to acknowledge what worked then was because of the time in which they were living in. You can have a community event where your neighbors and people will come out, right? That was the point in time where you were actually able to pass out flyers and talk to people and look them in the eye and talk about your concern. There were Black businesses that were around you. There were mom and pop shops from African Americans that were around you. And as much as we're like, hey, well, there are mom and pop shops around us. Okay, yes, but do they have the resources to be able to support tens of thousands of people? No. A lot of that stuff would put people in like a very tough financial situation because they don't have the resources, right? You go to Black businesses today, and then tomorrow you guys will be complaining anyway. Let me not go there. But I don't want to say you guys, but it'll be like, you'll get to this business and you're like, man, they've been out of stock for that soap for 10 months. I put that order in 3 weeks ago. I'm disputing it with my bank. You know what I mean? So I just think that let's not get caught up in the rage, because I think the rage of the rage of America's antics, right, will make you reactionary versus like revolutionary. You know what I mean? And I just think head on a swivel. head on. So that's what I'm saying. So let's just be practical about the things that we talk about. And like I said, me personally, I don't really care to get into the personalization of Tabitha Brown and I've seen some great messages that she's posted. Okay, great. It's her stuff. You know what I mean? I just think for me, I don't get into that, because how can you really say, I don't like this person? What is it that you don't like? Oh, she's performative. Oh, it's fake. Okay, so if Tabitha Brown is fake, but you like, rappers who genuinely tell you, yes, I have a ghostwriter. His name is, Ted Brown. And, he studies African-American culture. He paints his caricature. This is what it is. I actually didn't go through that. I never lived through that. I actually grew up in the church. I grew up in the church. You know what I mean? My parents were pastors, but I make this type of music and, you can get with that, but you can't get with someone just being like, hey, spreading love, I'm spreading light. Like, why is that phony to you? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be mindful of people who kind of, play in niceness, right? Because we understand that's a thing, right? We understand people can be very exploitative when it comes to being nice. But I just think what are we saying when we say those type of things? Because to me, that sounds like something that trickles down into the bullying of kind people. And that sounds like something that is the byproduct of Black women having to be strong and having to be rough and having to be aggressive, right? That plays into the reward of violence, right? That Black people receive when they're aggressive with one another, right? Because why is it that we don't believe when someone's being kind? Has this person, I've not seen Tabitha Brown say, hey, because I've seen some people play nice. There's a lot of these influencers that are coming up and they're like, hey, buy this 3-day, gym, whatever, and work out with me. And you're going to have this type of body. I've seen exploitative marketing before, and I don't feel like this person gives that. So to me, I feel like a lot of the personalization and saying I dislike this person because of the kindness is coming from some type of psychological enslavement that we should really look at. And I don't want to be extreme and say psychological enslavement because that sounds a little deep. You know what I mean? Maybe it's not that, but what is it? What can you pinpoint what it is about this person that you don't like, that you don't know, that you have taken the time to kind of personalize and be like, yeah, I'm at this person's neck. We at Tabitha's neck. What is it about it that seems phony to you? Like I said, I personally think it just kind of plays into the realities that, hey, Black women are to be a certain type of way. We are to be strong. We are to be aggressive, and we are to be hypersexual. And when we're not that, then we can't get with this, because these are the same people who will sit up here all day long and support all these crazy, immature women who are online, who are on these reality shows, snatching each other's wigs off, looking crazy. You know what I mean? Because that I feel like resonates with you more than someone who is acting their age, behaving their age, and spreading love, light, and positivity. What's wrong with it? And do you believe that, you can actually get up out of your situation? Do you believe that things can change for you? You're going to try to say no, but I have to disagree, because you're online, you're posting your content, you're doing this for something. You know what I mean? And you're getting rewards in your life. So it's sometimes if we're not careful, revisiting the past and advocating for things in that way can stifle us, right? And I think we do that because of, again, the psychological enslavement. We haven't really deprogrammed, deconstructed, and really been able to see a pathway clear. You know what I mean? We haven't really been able to see things moving forward. Where do we go from here? Okay, the work has been done. Because period, we're a little lazy. The work was done. They did the boycotting. You know what I mean? So where do we go from here, right? With this new American way that is hyper convenience, extreme convenience. And that's not just the Black community, that's everybody. And I've seen someone say white people will probably stop shopping at Target if more than Black people. Honestly, shopping at Target is not really the issue. You know what I mean? It's I don't think that that's a hard thing to do, but it's when you start naming, again, the conglomerate, start naming them all these businesses within the market, of this monopoly. It's what are we really talking about? That's what I'm saying, And so I just think that convenience is the American way. asking Black people to forego that, the people who have the least resources. You can't even go in town. I was shopping at a Black bookstore. Do you know they shut that bookstore down? That bookstore didn't last long. There were, I believe there was an Asian, they ended up opening a bookstore right next door, shut them out of business. You know what I mean? And even when I was visiting that bookstore, there was no Black people shopping in that bookstore, not to that extent, you know, and I'm not here to, you know, I'm not here to play both sides. I'm just saying, like, is it feasible? Is that feasible today? Okay, so this was good, man. Take everything I said into consideration, because I'm not opposed. I'm just asking you, what is the solution? And I don't think, like, I understand that we have to focus on understanding what the problem is before we get to the solution. That's fine. But there are some of us who genuinely understand what the problem is. We know what the problem is, you know what I mean? And we want to know, okay, what is the solution? And if you're coming from a historical standpoint, it's not practical, because things have changed, right? And I'm not saying racism has changed. No, that hasn't dissolved. Discriminatory practices, that hasn't dissolved. No, of course not. You know what I mean? Like, that's very evident today. But when you start talking about, like, lifestyles, the American way, okay, for Black people, what are we? That's not feasible. That's not feasible. So let me know what you think in the comments. Peace.